It's a gruesome case that shocked the nation. A Wisconsin woman was accused of murdering her lover during sex, dismembering his body and leaving his head and penis in a bucket for his mother to discover. Can you imagine just for a moment seeing a bucket containing a human head and a penis? What's more than the chilling details in this disturbing case are the surprising outbursts we've seen from the defendant since her arrest. On February 23, approximately at 3:25 a.m. 911 received this call.
Yes, I live in officer at 829 Stony Brook. My friend just woke me up and swears that she found her severed head of her son in the basement.
Did you go down there?
In a bucket. I went down, I can't tell what the fuck it is. Part of my language, I'm kind of a little freaked out.
Whose head is it?
She's claiming it's her son.
How old is her son?
24, 25?
Has he been missing, or?
No, yeah, he was here yesterday with some chick, and then all of a sudden nobody's here.
Where's the rest of the body at?
No idea.
Okay.
He was here a couple hours, then he left with Taylor, and they
What's
met some
his
big
name?
Taylor,
Who's that?
girl, Taylor Coronado,
You know how to spell her
girl.
last name?
After 911 call, police arrived at Thyrion's mother's home within 10 minutes in the snowy, bitter morning.
I don't know what the fuck it is, man. I have bad vision, and she's like, is that what I think it is? I'm like, I don't fucking know. What the fuck it is?
Do you want to just stay with those two? I'll just go see it.
Where's
it at?
Go right there. Look right, there's a bucket with a towel on it.
Following Tara's, Thyrion's mother, directions, they found the bucket at the bottom of the stairs, a towel on top, inside a severed head. The two responding officers were so shocked by this entire situation. They had to double check to make sure the head was real and not made of rubber.
If we could get some more units here sooner rather than later, that'd be appreciated. We've got quite a bit of blood down here. I want to clear this rest of this house. We've got 2 people in the house for sure.
The basement, on the mattress, on the floors, and later when checking the bookage, fully it was filled with blood, and there was a penis also inside, as well as 2 knives. Later bags would also be found in the basement containing body parts, the upper torso, internal organs, and more knives would be found. The next question was who was the last person to be with Shad to see him, and that was a person Shad's mother Tara called Taylor Coronado, better known as Taylor Schabusiness. Taylor Schabusiness is a 24-year-old married woman who was born on November 23, 1997 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Her birth name was Taylor Denise Coronado, but in 2018, for unknown reasons, she petitioned the court for a legal name change to Schabusiness. She was raised and formally educated in Wisconsin, but public records show she's also lived in Suamico, Wisconsin, as well as several cities in Texas before ultimately returning to Green Bay. Shad Thyrion was born on September 7, 1997 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was raised in the village of Ashwaubenon, a suburb of Green Bay known mostly for being the home of Lambeau Field. Shad was one of 4 siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. He was a Bayport High School student from 2010 to 2015. Although he is not listed as a graduate, there is no record of post-secondary education or history of arrests. He moved on to work at his father's and grandfather's family businesses. After high school, he was an avid camper and a talented artist who loved music and enjoyed wood carving. Shad was described by family members as kind, compassionate, and good-natured. In terms of his romantic relationships, not much is known other than he was single at the time of the incident, and despite what appeared to be a peacefully mundane existence, he managed to become involved with a married woman who frequently engaged in high-risk antisocial behaviors, including illicit drug use. 24-year-old Taylor Schabusiness killed her 23-year-old boyfriend Shad Thyrion by choking him to death while they were having sex in February 2022. After that disturbing act, officials say she dismembered Thyrion's body, leaving his head and penis in a bucket at the bottom of his mother's staircase. According to explicit court documents, she now faces multiple charges including first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault.
After finding the severed head, about an hour and a half later, officers arrived at Taylor's Green Bay home. Before they even spoke to her or met her, and then knocked on her door. They saw the trail of blood from her vehicle and follow it.
Nothing. Hey. Is this blood? Does this look like blood to you? Or am I just tripping? Bloody footprint? You see this right here? Could possibly be blood. Hey, who did that? Hi, Taylor. How's it going? Officer Russell with the Green Bay Police Department. Just make sure you ain't got nothing on you here.
Taylor emerged from the apartment building and seemed pretty surprised to see the police standing outside right beside her vehicle. She had blood on the front of her sweatshirt, sweatpants, and hands.
Nobody's armed?
Nobody's armed.
You sure?
I'm sure.
According to the ABC News affiliate, Wabay TV, Schabusiness told a forensic psychologist about her history of polysubstance abuse as well as mental health struggles, including psychiatric hospitalization when she was in 7th grade after a suicide attempt and prior diagnoses of bipolar disorder, attention deficit disorder, deficit hyperactivity disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. As a youth, she attended Bayport High School, but there is no record of her having completed her education there or of any post-secondary education. Very little is known about her employment history following high school by any measure. She has had what most would consider a checkered past. As a young adult, Schabusiness was dealing with an assortment of financial and legal difficulties, and by the time she turned 23 years old she had a rap sheet that included multiple felonies. With that, Schabusiness also appears to have been the beneficiary of considerable.
Hi, I'm Taylor Schabusiness, and I'm a very hardworking, dedicated individual that's broke and really needs money to help get that swole on. So if you could please donate to this GoFundMe page, be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thyrion's body parts were recovered in multiple areas, including Schabusiness's vehicle, a bucket, and a crock pot. After her arrest, Schabusiness told Green Bay investigators to, quote, "I liked it," and that she, quotes, played with the victim's body for like 2 or 3 hours, performing sexual acts on his genitals and putting a sex toy in his body after he was already dead. Schabusiness allegedly told police they were, quote, "going to have fun trying to find all the organs."
She allegedly said to the police, "Good luck finding all of his organs." Holy smokes, who says that?
Forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan tells that it's a troubling case that stands out because of its bizarre details.
There's a lot of psychopathy in that particular, from that particular perspective, where you're attempting not just to, I think, destroy the individual, simply through this idea of dismemberment, but you're trying to depersonalize them to a great degree.
Morgan says dismemberment has become a more frequent means of disposing of a body in recent years. However, he says a female defendant accused of dismemberment and sexual assault is a rarity.
I think it all centers around the severing of the penis, because that in and of itself is a sexualized event. Again, this goes to a special level of depravity at this point in time. The penis being removed and placed into the bucket with the head. One would ask, well, what was done with the penis after it had been removed, I think.
Before the alleged dismemberment, Schabusiness told investigators she smoked marijuana and meth and shot up trazodone.
This case in particular is very troubling, but it's rooted in substances. You know, when you begin to think about, as you mentioned just a moment ago, there's meth involved and trazodone, and admittedly, they've been ingested. And so that gives you an idea of the world in which the accused, at least, existed in, which is certainly, I think, to say the least, is living on the edge.
After her arrest in February 2022, Schabusiness was booked in the Brown County Jail. She's still being held there on a $2 million bond. Last July, she pleaded not guilty to all charges by reason of mental disease or defect.
Mr. Jolly, have you and your client received a copy of the information?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you asking that the information be read out formally in open court?
No, Your Honor, we waive the reading of the information. I've gone over it with my client. It does appear to mirror what is in the complaint. We enter not guilty pleas on all counts.
But despite her plea, Schabusiness competency has come into question on multiple occasions.
Who's going to represent Ms. Schabusiness in this very important case? And it's getting a little bit confusing. She's making some of these choices to allow it to be confusing on her own. And I'm satisfied that that too gives the court concern or reason to doubt the defendant's competence.
Since her arrest, Schabusiness has undergone multiple court-appointed evaluations where she's been found both competent and not competent to stand trial. As recently as last week, an independent forensic psychologist told Judge Thomas Walsh Schabusiness is not competent for her coming jury trial.
My conclusion from observing her reactions to my questions, what she offered during the interview, led me to conclude that yes, she met the criteria for consideration of the special plea, not guilty, NGI, I call it. But then I also concluded at that time she was not competent to proceed to trial. The foundation included her looking in detail at her extensive records going back to childhood, looking at the pattern of her behaviors that began in middle school and escalated in high school, review of her Nicolay inpatient records, psychiatric records, that I think were from 2021, and looking at those records, her jail records, and then just the manner in which she has presented to other evaluators in this case and a previous evaluation she had for custody of her son. And then the observations that I made during the interview with her when you were present showed signs of an active psychotic disorder.
The same expert testified Schabusiness physically lashed out at her during a meeting back in February.
She had thrown a chair at me during the first attempted interview.
Was that on February 7th of 2023?
Yes.
Okay, what happened there?
This was done in a private conference room at the jail, and she was nonverbal. She was nonverbal during all three of these attempted interviews back in February 2023. But the first time she entered the room, didn't greet me, seemed to, she acknowledged I was there, and sat down. We both sat down. And I went through, even though she was nonverbal, wasn't talking to me, she would nod her head. So I went through my consent form with her, explaining the reason for my evaluation, her rights to confidentiality, and so on. And she again nodded that she understood. Then when I started the interview, by my usual asking her date of birth, her race, she then suddenly got up from her chair and yelled and went to the corner of the room, picked up a fortunately it was a plastic chair, and then she threw it at me across the room. It did not hit me. She then calmly sat back down, and I rang for the guards, and it took them a couple minutes to get there. Meanwhile, I sat back down too, and then asked her about why she had done that. I did notice her physiological response was bizarre, which she didn't have any after just doing that, being extremely angry, throwing a chair at her evaluator, her defense retained evaluator. She sat there very, no response, just blank face, no physiological response of a person who had just done such a thing.
The first business acting out in violence. In fact, she was caught on camera physically attacking her attorney Quinn Jolly at a court appearance in February.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
WBay reporter and anchor Brittany Schmidt, who was in the courtroom during that attack, she can be seen in the video reacting as Schabusiness lashes out.
It was certainly an attack, and I've been in so many courtrooms and so many cases, and this is the first time I've really seen a defendant physically go after their own attorney. She is wearing a belt, and her handcuffs are attached to that belt, so she didn't have a lot of range of motion, but you do see her lead with her elbow and lunge at her defense attorney, and he puts his hands up to defend himself, and the deputy is very close by, within feet of her. He gets her to the ground rather quickly and maintains control of her. He holds her down as they call for backup. She did have her foot like wrapped around some cord on his belt, and that's when they said, okay, we need everybody to clear the room because for safety reasons. So everybody was escorted out of the courtroom at that time.
After this outburst in court, Schabusiness's then attorney petitioned to be removed from her case. She's since been assigned a new court-appointed attorney, though we have yet to see another physical outburst. Schabusiness has displayed a range of emotions in court, from flipping off the judge to almost completely ignoring him.
Ms. Schabusines isn't here today. She doesn't seem to be engaging directly with the court. I can't see her face. I can see her, but she's not looking into the camera. Now she is.
As the trial date inches closer, some experts note the similarities between Schabusiness's case and Jeffrey Dahmer's, perhaps the most infamous trial out of Wisconsin.
Wisconsin doesn't have the death penalty. All we have to do is reflect back to Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Jeffrey Dahmer did a lot of things that were really over the top. That is a gross understatement on my part. So it's not like that hasn't been visited before, and he had sexualized the dead in that particular case.
At last week's court appearance, to Schabusiness's defense, retained psychology expert confirmed the defendant has a, quote, fascination with a serial killer.
She said that she had a thing with Jeffrey Dahmer about a year ago, and just on and on. There were just numerous of these strange comments about Johnny Cash being on the train. She went further into her tangential thoughts about the train, how loud his whistle was, and how Johnny Cash overdosed, apparently, on a train.
Despite that, experts believe that Schabusiness is not competent to stand trial. Judge Thomas Walsh has not yet officially ruled on the matter right now. Let's examine the public record of Schabusiness. On December 6, 2019, Schabusiness was cited for operating a vehicle with a suspended driver license. She pleaded no contest and paid a fine of $200.50. In June 2020, she was arrested and charged with battery or threat to a law enforcement officer and a misdemeanor resisting or obstructing an officer. She pleaded no contest to the battery charge and was found guilty. The resisting charge was dismissed. She was sentenced to 60 days in jail with 3 years of probation. A wage garnishment was executed as well to recover court-ordered penalties. In August 2020, she was charged with failure to appear in court and resisting an officer. Fortunately for her, both charges were dismissed as part of the June case. Just weeks later, on August 31, 2020, she was caught with drug paraphernalia and charged with misdemeanor possession, felony failure to appear, felony fleeing from an officer in a vehicle, and misdemeanor resisting an officer. Once again, the failure to appear charges were dismissed, as were the drug charges. Despite the apparent parole violations, she received a meager 3 months in jail with 2 years probation. On the resisting and fleeing charges, she was deemed a flight risk and required to wear a GPS ankle bracelet monitor. On January 7, 2021, she was sued by a federal credit union and lost. On February 9, 2021, she was sued by the City of Green Bay and lost. A judgment in favor of the City of Green Bay was entered in the amount of $4,998. On September 28, 2021, a bench warrant was authorized after she failed to appear for a hearing for the third time. On October 26, 2021, she was returned to court on the bench warrant. On January 3, 2022, a sentencing hearing took place. At this time, she was convicted on a charge of felony battery or threat to a judge, prosecutor, or law enforcement officer. From the June 2020 case, she was sentenced to 3 months in jail with work release privileges according to online court records.
Stop it. Stop it. Rachel, call. Taylor, stop. You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
Yeah, let's just go to secondary.
Taylor, can you walk?
Oh, yeah.
At this point, I'm going to put a motion in to withdraw from this matter.
Taylor Schabusiness is probably the most insane woman. She was pleaded not guilty due to her mental illness and now facing multiple trials.